Hey guys, and welcome to Start Linux Today. Now this video is just going to be a very quick look at VirtualBox and how to use it. So if you're planning on using Linux but you don't want to install it on your actual computer and you just want to play around with it in a virtual environment, this is where VirtualBox will come in. And if you're following the Start Linux guide, then you will be using VirtualBox. So it's good to watch this video to have an understanding on what we're doing. Now it is explained on how to use VirtualBox to create a VM. When I say VM, I mean a virtual machine, which is just the virtualized Linux, but it doesn't really go into specifics, so that's what this video is for. So let's start. So straight away what you see is you'll see I've got two little squares here, little boxes, right? One is called Ubuntu and one is called Elementary OS. These are virtual machines. Okay, so I could power one up right now and it would be a full-blown Linux distro. And I'm going to show you as an example. I just hit start and then the virtual machine is restored and then I'm in. This is a virtual machine. Let me just prove to you that it is fully functional. This is it. Just like that. So this is perfect for testing, and you can either shut it down like you normally would with like a normal computer. You would just click shut down and this will shut down the actual virtual machine, or you could just click, let me show you again, click start and this will start up the virtual machine. Okay, so it's back up and running. So then if you wanted to shut it down another way, you can just go up to into machine and then you can click ACPI shutdown, and that will just shut the machine down as well. Okay, so that is how to start a virtual machine and how to shut one down. Pretty straightforward and simple. Creating one. So this is how this works. You've got the new button up here. If you click new, it will then ask you to give your VM a name. Now the way VirtualBox works is it kind of guesses, right, based off the name you give it, what sort of, what type of virtual machine is it. So is it going to be Windows, is it going to be Linux, what type of Linux. So let's say if I type in Ubuntu, bam, it knows, hey look, it's Linux, it's based off the name, we're going to assume it's Ubuntu, right? What else have we got? What about like Fedora? Bam, Fedora is another Linux distribution. Let's go, see, as soon as you type WI, it's going like, Windows. And you'll see it's Windows 7 at the moment. Bam, Windows 10, change the version to Windows 10. So it's pretty good at guessing. So it kind of takes the guesswork out of what you would choose. Because there's a few here, right? So like, if you were coming into this for a first time, you might get a little confused. So if you're creating a virtual machine, I recommend you to name it what it's actually called, because VirtualBox is quite good at figuring it out for you. Okay, so let's just say I'm going to go with Ubuntu, and I'll call this just the video, right, because it's just for a video, and then I can hit next. Now what it's asking you for now is your memory size. So what memory is RAM, okay, and this is based off your physical computer's resources. Okay, so you can't just go, oh, I'm going to give this 8 gig. Now technically I can give it 8 gig because that's the total amount on my computer. Sorry, and when I say gig, I mean gigabyte, and that's the amount of RAM I can allocate, right? So it's not recommended you give maximum resources, right? Because it's taking it all away from your actual computer and putting it into this virtual machine. And let's just try to think of that, right? You're trying to walk around, you know, you've got 2 glasses of water and you can't do anything else, right? Because you can't grab something else because your hands are full, right? That's like your computer. Your computer's trying to manage itself, but it's also it's doing all this heavy lifting for your virtual machine. So you got to give it some breathing room, right? It's trying to do other things than just run a virtual machine. So the best way to do this is to give it around 2 gig, which is 2048, or you can stick with the recommended. So if you stick with the recommended, you can just hit next, and then if you find that your computer's running a little bit slow, I'll cover that as well on how to edit the virtual machine later on. For this example, I'm just going to leave it as the recommended, and then I'll show you how to change it. Now it's asking you to create a virtual hard disk. Now this is a virtual hard drive, okay, so it's got nothing to do with your computer storage. Well, it's using your computer's physical storage, and it's cutting out a little chunk that you give it to allocate to this virtual machine, right? And in no way does that interact with the running of your actual computer. So it's safe, right? You can destroy this virtual machine and it will not interact at all with your main computer. So it's a carefree zone essentially. When you come up to here, I would just recommend leave it as VirtualBox disk image and hit next. And here it gives you two options, right? So dynamically allocated and fixed size. What dynamically allocated means is that, say I've set 100 gigabyte of storage for my virtual machine, but it's dynamic. So what that means is your computer's not going to grab 100 gigs straight away. It's just said this virtual machine is allowed up to 100 gig, right? But say the install is only 1 gig, 1 gig is only going to be used until you keep adding more. Fixed size means I'm going to give my virtual machine 100 gigabyte, so your computer automatically grabs 100 gigabyte and reserves that for your virtual machine. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If not, you might be able to have a little read through here, but yeah, you should, if you're going to choose a hard disk, stick with dynamically allocated, and then hit next. Now it's asking you where you would like to save this hard drive, and how much space you want to allocate to it. Now, why would you want to choose where you're storing this hard drive? Well, in my case, I have more than one hard drive, okay? And I don't want to store it on my C drive. I could store it in my storage, or I could store it in my SSD storage. So these are just for me, right? You might just have one, and if you've just got one, that's fine. Just store it there, okay? So I'm going to stick with the storage, and I'm just going to make a new folder real quick. Just named it VMs, and then I'll just save it in there, okay? Then I'm going to hit create. And bam, it's right there. So once you've created your virtual machine, you can hit start. And then once you hit start, it's going to ask you, please select a startup disk. Now, what's a startup disk? Now, you would have downloaded an ISO. So what an ISO is just a virtual CD. Think of it as that, right? It's instead of putting a physical CD into your computer, you've downloaded a virtual CD that you'll put into your virtual machine, okay? Everything is virtualized in this world. So just, yeah, if you think of it as a virtual CD, you should be fine. So you would have downloaded a virtual CD, an ISO. I'm going to call it an ISO because that's what it's called. You're going to have downloaded an ISO from Ubuntu's site, Linux Mint's site, or wherever you've got a Linux ISO from. You can select that now, and then, so I will show you as an example. I've just got one of my downloads at the moment, which is Elementary OS. If you had Ubuntu or Linux Mint, doesn't matter, just double click it. It will appear here, click start, and then your virtual machine is going to boot from that ISO, just like a CD, and then it's going to start running, okay? And that's how easy it is to start a virtual machine. Now, if you want to see the installation of a virtual machine, please, if you're following the Start Linux guide, you're going to be coming up to that anyways. If not, I recommend you to go check that out because it will talk into detail on how to run through the install of a virtual machine. So I'm not going to cover that, I'm just covering the VirtualBox itself. So within the VM window, you've got File, which has got Preferences. So if we go on the Preferences, you can just see a couple of things. Now, a lot of this might not be any use to you, but I'm just going to run through them anyways. So this is telling you where your VirtualBox is located, so your VM, just in case you wanted to remove it, copy it, whatever, you know where it's stored. An input, so this just has a few shortcuts for the virtual machine. You can assign shortcuts or anything like that. I just leave them as default. I don't spend much time in here. That's the exact same for the VirtualBox Manager. You can just set up shortcuts if you like. You can have VirtualBox checking for updates, set the language, display. It's pretty good at automatically guessing the screen size, so I don't really touch that. And then there's just a bit of advanced stuff here that I don't think you'd tinker with unless you needed to, and if you needed to, you'd probably know how to do it. So I'm going to cancel one of that. Now let's look at machine. So in machine, you've got settings. Now we're going to cover this a bit more because you'll see a lot of it's actually grayed out. We can't actually interact with it. And why is that? Because the virtual machine is running. Think of if you had your physical computer running next to you, would you start pulling pieces out of it while it's running? No. So let's just cancel out of this, and I'll cover this later. View. So here we can set our virtual machine to come into full screen mode, scaled mode, so we can just increase it to how we want. Same with like adjusting the window size. Take a screenshot if you'd like. You can take some video captures of your virtual machine, which is really nice. You can edit the menu bar, the status bar, scale factor if you want to scale it up, scale it down. And then you've got your virtual machine, so you can resize it manually to a screen size. But for example, if you wanted a full screen, you just click full screen mode. It's going to let you know, hey look, the virtual machine is going to go on full screen mode. If you want to get out and get your actual cursor back, because you'll see that when we click into it, you get a virtual cursor, right? The one that's actually in the VM. If you want your host cursor back, you just hit the right to control, and I'll show that. So we hit switch, and see how my cursor's gone black. Right, so how do I get out of here now? Right, I'm in full screen mode. There's a couple ways, right? If you hit right control, we can come down here, and you'll see that this is the way to get out of it. So this is the VirtualBox settings here, where this isn't anything to do with this in here. It's just the VirtualBox. So that's how you get out. You can just hit the scale it down, the minimize tab in the VirtualBox, and that's it. What else have we got? We've got input, so you can change some keyboard settings if you like. I leave a lot of that as default. There's not much need in changing it unless you really want to. Optical drives, so this is your virtual CD, like I said, and what do you see? You see that ISO, so it's currently in there, and you can remove that if you would like from the virtual drive. You've got audio, so you can put make sure you can use a mic. Even if you've got a physical microphone like I do, I can have my virtual machine link into that. But if that's happening, that means my physical computer cannot use it anymore, right? Because it's being used by something else, which makes sense. You can change some network settings. If I wanted to hook up a couple of things into my virtual machine via USB, I can do that. Shared clipboard, which means I can copy something from my actual computer and then paste it into a virtual machine, which is quite handy. And here you've got guest edition CD image. So this just adds extra compatibility to your VirtualBox. Now, I don't expect this to make a lot of sense, okay? I'm rushing through this, I know, but you just have to understand the basics, and you have to understand just kind of what's here. Okay, I do not expect you to understand everything I'm talking about, so don't try. And then help, just general help stuff, right? You can go to their main website, go to the forums, and stuff like that. But yeah, so that is that part of it, and let's just shut this down. And then I'll show you how we can change the configuration of this virtual machine. And you'll see here, please remove the installation medium, because I'm shutting it down as soon as it's finished the install. I'm just going to hit the close button, and then you can force power off. This is like pulling the plug out of the back of the machine. Alright, so now if we go into settings, you'll see this is no longer grayed out because it's off, so we can actually change parts. So let's just have a quick look. You want to change the name, you can do that here. So this is snapshots. I'll quickly cover a snapshot. So what a snapshot is, but it's just a quick snapshot of your VM's current state, right? So if you break it, you can always revert back to an earlier snapshot that you took of it and then continue working, right? So if you're about to do something that's a little bit dodgy, take a snapshot before doing it, you break it, cool, you've got that snapshot to go back to. You can add a description for your VM if you really want, and then you can enable disk encryption. In system, here is what I was saying before. If you notice your VM's running a little bit slow, this is where you can increase your RAM. But not only that, you can also assign more processing power, and I always recommend about 2, okay, just for a Linux VM, just for doing basic tasks. It just makes everything run a little bit smoother, and I also recommend 2 GB, so that's 2048 MB of RAM for just a good experience. I don't mess around with any of the display, but if you want to add a bit more video memory, you can just ramp this right to storage. Here you can add extra hard drives to it, so you can add more than one hard drive if you'd like. Now you can't change this, okay, so once you've kind of set that size, that's the size. You can always just remove this and add another hard drive if you like. Audio, you can change the audio if you like, but I just leave it as default. Networks, add extra networks, stuff like that. I'm not going to go into great detail. Serial ports, if you want to enable better USB support, you can. Shared folders and user interface, so you can change all that around. I'm not going into detail because I don't think I need to. So yeah, let's cancel out of that. And then that is pretty much it, okay? You've got a couple machine tools up here, again, so you can see your snapshots and stuff like that. But the main things that you need to know is how to create a VM, how to start a VM, and how to shut down a VM, okay? So thank you for watching the video, and I hope you have fun following the guide if you are, with creating your VM, and I wish you the very best. Thanks, bye.